Family loyalty is a trap wrapped in a bloodline. When my own mother cornered me in the venue restroom and hissed, "Just stay silent and don't ruin your sister's night," I planned to obey. I really did. Then the billionaire father of the groom walked in, dropped his crystal champagne glass, and called me his savior. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured, icy light across the vaulted ceiling of the glass house, an obscenely expensive botanical venue nestled in the heart of the city. Exotic orchids dripped from suspended floral arrangements, and the gentle clinking of sterling silverware against bone china created a rhythmic, elitist symphony. It was the rehearsal dinner of the decade, a spectacular merger between my family's old money desperation and the Brooks family's astronomical tech wealth. And standing near the ice sculpture of two swans, shivering in a hideous, oversized beige dress, was me. Savannah, my older sister, and the undisputed golden child of the family, was holding court. She looked like a walking diamond in her custom white silk slip dress, her blonde hair cascading in perfect, effortless waves. Beside her stood her fiancé, Preston Brooks. Preston had the kind of sharp, predatory, handsome face that belonged on a country club brochure, complete with an arrogant smirk that never quite reached his cold blue eyes. My mother, Caroline, was buzzing around the couple like a frantic, social climbing bee. She smoothed invisible wrinkles from Savannah's dress, laughed too loudly at Preston's mediocre jokes, and aggressively networked with anyone wearing a Rolex. Every time Caroline's eyes flicked over to my corner, her smile would tighten into a thin, disappointed line. She had chosen my dress. A week ago, she had shown up at my small apartment with a plastic garment bag, her expression brimming with faux maternal concern. "Harper, darling," she had cooed, holding up a drab, shapeless beige abomination that looked like a burlap sack tailored for a monk. "Since Savannah is the bride, we don't want any distractions. You have a tendency to be a bit loud with your choices. We just want you to blend in, be supportive, be silent." I had taken the dress without a fight. Fighting Caroline was like trying to punch water. It was exhausting and left you drowning. For 26 years, the dynamic had been carved in stone. Savannah was the brilliant, beautiful star destined for greatness, and I was the rebellious disappointment. My grave sin? Abandoning the prestigious law degree my mother had mapped out for me to pursue cybersecurity and software architecture. To Caroline, anything involving computers that didn't come with a corner office and a shiny plaque was a failure. She told her friends I worked at a help desk, fixing frozen screens for minimum wage. I never bothered to correct her. I never told her that I had founded my own cybersecurity firm, Apex Solutions, or that my client roster included Fortune 500 companies. Keeping my family on a strict information diet was the only way to protect my sanity. "Harper, there you are," a nasal voice grated. I turned to see Aunt Beatrice, clutching a glass of Pinot Noir like a weapon. She was draped in velvet and judgment. "Aunt Beatrice," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "You look lovely." She completely ignored the compliment, her eyes scanning my beige dress with profound pity. "Such a shame you couldn't find a +1 for tonight. But I suppose men are intimidated by a woman who spends all her time in a basement fiddling with wires." Savannah, on the other hand. Well, Preston is quite the catch. The Brooks family is practically royalty. They certainly have a lot of money, I offered neutrally. Beatrice scoffed. "Harrison Brooks, Preston's father, is a visionary, the CEO of Brooks Enterprises. Do you even know what that is, dear? They build the software that runs half the banking sector. Not exactly the kind of computers you fix." I took a slow sip of my sparkling water. "I'm familiar with Brooks Enterprises." Familiar was an understatement. I was intimately acquainted with Brooks Enterprises, but Beatrice didn't need to know that, nor did anyone else in this room. "Well, just try not to embarrass your sister tonight," Beatrice sniffed, turning on her heel to go fawn over a group of Preston's groomsmen. I let out a slow breath, retreating further into the shadow of a massive fern. The room was filling up. Preston's mother, Meredith Brooks, a woman whose face was pulled so tight she looked permanently surprised, was currently kissing Caroline's cheek. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and pretentious small talk. Preston caught my eye from across the room. He whispered something into Savannah's ear, and they both looked at me, smirking. Savannah offered a tiny, patronizing wave. I waved back, feeling the rough, scratchy fabric of my beige prison rubbing against my collarbone. They thought they knew me. They thought they had me perfectly boxed into the role of the pathetic, spinster sister. As a waiter walked by, I swapped my sparkling water for a glass of champagne. It was going to be a very long night, and Harrison Brooks, the legendary patriarch and CEO, had yet to arrive. Dinner was announced with the soft chime of a crystal bell. The guests migrated toward the dining area, a stunning glass conservatory overlooking the illuminated city skyline. I found my place card at table 9. It was located in the furthest, darkest corner of the room, right next to the swinging kitchen doors. My dining companions consisted of 3 elderly great-aunts who were already complaining about the draft, and 2 of Preston's frat brothers who looked like they were already heavily intoxicated. Savannah and Preston were seated at a massive, elevated head table, draped in white orchids and glowing candles. Caroline was seated right beside them, beaming like she had personally orchestrated the creation of the universe. Notably, the seat next to Preston's mother remained empty. Harrison Brooks was late. The first course, a ridiculously tiny portion of seared scallop on a bed of microgreens, was served. As the waiters darted in and out of the kitchen, their elbows constantly grazing my chair, the speeches began. Preston's best man delivered a speech filled with inside jokes about golf and yachts. Then, it was my mother's turn. Caroline glided to the microphone, tapping it with a manicured fingernail. The room fell silent. "Family, friends, Brooks, family," she began, her voice dripping with practiced sweetness. "Tonight is a dream come true. When Savannah was a little girl, I always knew she was destined for extraordinary things. She has always been the light of our family, the standard of grace and beauty." She paused, dabbing a completely dry eye with a tissue. "Raising daughters is a journey. Some children test your patience. They take unconventional, difficult paths." Her gaze snapped to table 9, locking onto me for a split second. A few family members chuckled knowingly, but Savannah always understood duty. She understood legacy. And now, she is joining a family that represents the pinnacle of success. To Preston and Savannah. To Preston and Savannah, the room echoed, raising their glasses. I drank my champagne in one gulp, the acid burning the back of my throat. The humiliation was subtle enough that calling it out would make me look crazy, but sharp enough to draw blood. It was Caroline's signature move. Needing a moment to breathe without inhaling the scent of my family's contempt, I pushed my chair back and slipped away toward the restrooms in the main lobby. The marble hallway was blissfully quiet. I splashed some cold water on my wrists at the gold-plated sink, staring at my reflection. The beige dress washed out my complexion, making me look like a tired ghost. I closed my eyes, counting to 10, reminding myself that in 48 hours, the wedding would be over, and I could fly back to my sanctuary on the West Coast. As I pushed the restroom door open to leave, a hand clamped down on my arm, yanking me into the alcove near the coat check. It was Caroline. Her sweet maternal mask was gone, replaced by a terrifying cold fury. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed, her grip surprisingly strong. "I went to the bathroom, Mom." "It's a natural biological function," I replied, trying to pull my arm away. "Don't you dare use that tone with me," Caroline snapped, leaning in close. "I saw the way you were looking at me during my speech, rolling your eyes, sulking in the corner like a wounded animal. You are projecting miserable energy, Harper. I was literally just sitting there. You are wearing a face like a funeral. Listen to me," she said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Harrison Brooks is arriving any minute. His flight from Zurich was delayed. The man is a billionaire, Harper. He is the most important person we will ever meet. Savannah's entire future, her standing in high society, depends on this family accepting us. I will not have you ruining this with your weirdness, your awkward tech geek demeanor." "I haven't spoken to anyone," I fired back, my patience snapping. "Keep it that way," Caroline ordered, her fingernails digging into my skin. "Stay silent. Don't speak unless spoken to. If Mr. Brooks walks by, you look down, you smile, and you stay out of the way. Do not mention your pathetic little help desk job. Do not embarrass your sister. Are we clear?" Before I could answer, a massive commotion erupted in the main foyer. A set of heavy oak doors swung open, and the atmosphere in the venue instantly shifted. The air seemed to crackle. Caroline dropped my arm, her face instantly morphing back into the glowing, overjoyed mother of the bride. She shoved me backward, slightly behind a marble pillar, and practically sprinted toward the entrance. Through the archway, I watched as Harrison Brooks walked in. He was a tall, imposing man in his late 50s, wearing a sharp, dark navy suit that screamed bespoke tailoring. He looked exhausted, yet radiated a terrifying amount of authority. An assistant was trailing right behind him, frantically typing on a tablet, while a security detail hovered near the doors. Preston rushed forward, looking like an eager puppy. "Dad, you made it!" "Barely," Harrison said, his voice a deep, gravelly baritone that carried across the quieted room. He embraced his son briefly, then nodded to Savannah. "Savannah, you look lovely. My apologies for the delay. We had a catastrophic situation at the firm that required my personal attention." "Oh, Mr. Brooks, we are just so honored you're here," Caroline gushed, inserting herself into the circle. "I'm Caroline, Savannah's mother. We've been waiting with bated breath." Harrison offered a tight, polite smile. "A pleasure, Caroline. The venue is stunning." "Please, come in, sit," Preston's mother, Meredith, urged. "Everyone has been waiting for you to make a toast." Harrison nodded, handing his overcoat to a waiter. He began walking toward the grand dining room, the entire crowd parting for him like the Red Sea. He was the king holding court. I stayed pinned behind the marble pillar in the hallway, adjusting my beige dress, planning to sneak back to table 9 through the service corridor. I didn't want to deal with Caroline's wrath, and I certainly didn't want to make a scene. But as Harrison Brooks approached the entryway of the dining room, he paused. His sharp eyes scanned the periphery of the room, looking past the flowers, past the waiters, past Caroline's beaming face. He was looking toward the coat check, toward the alcove, toward the shadows. His gaze locked onto me. For a second, the bustling noise of the rehearsal dinner faded away. Harrison stopped dead in his tracks. His assistant bumped into him, but Harrison didn't notice. His eyes widened, a flash of absolute shock crossing his stoic features. "Mr. Brooks?" Caroline asked, her voice laced with sudden panic, noticing where he was looking. She stepped sideways, trying to block his view of me. "Oh, pay no attention to her. That's just Harper. She's just the sister." Harrison didn't look at Caroline. He didn't look at Preston. He stepped around my mother, walking straight toward the marble pillar where I was hiding. "Harper?" he breathed out, his voice echoing in the sudden, dead silence of the hallway. The silence in the grand hallway was absolute. It was the kind of heavy, suffocating quiet that usually precedes a car crash. Every eye in the glass house was pinned on us. The waiters froze with their silver trays suspended in midair. Aunt Beatrice's jaw hung entirely slack, her glass of Pinot Noir tipping dangerously close to the edge of her velvet bodice. Harrison Brooks stood inches away from me, his towering frame completely obscuring my mother's frantic, hovering presence. His stern, weathered face, a face that regularly graced the covers of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, softened into an expression of profound, almost desperate relief. "Harper?" he repeated, his baritone voice trembling slightly with disbelief. "Harper Hayes?" "Good evening, Mr. Brooks," I replied, keeping my voice even, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight. I assumed you were still locked in the war room in Zurich." Caroline let out a high-pitched, hysterical giggle. She squeezed herself between us, her face flushed a blotchy, panicked red. "Mr. Brooks, I am so sorry. My daughter has a very overactive imagination. She watches too many movies. Harper, apologize to Mr. Brooks for bothering him, and go back to table 9 immediately. Now." She reached out to grab my wrist again, her perfectly manicured nails poised to dig into my skin. "Do not touch her," Harrison commanded. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The quiet authority in those 4 words hit Caroline like a physical blow. She recoiled, her hand snatching back to her chest, her mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. Harrison turned his full attention back to me, completely ignoring my mother, my sister, and the 100 bewildered guests watching the drama unfold. He reached out and grasped both of my hands in a firm, deeply respectful handshake. "You saved my legacy today," Harrison said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent room. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Preston, who had hurried over from the head table, stopped dead in his tracks. Dad? What are you talking about? Saved your legacy? That's Harper. She fixes frozen laptops. Harrison didn't even look at his son. His eyes remained locked on mine, burning with a mixture of awe and gratitude. At 4:00 a.m. this morning, Brooks Enterprises was hit by the most sophisticated zero-day ransomware attack in the history of our sector. They bypassed our firewalls, encrypted our primary databases, and threatened to leak the financial data of 3 global banking conglomerates. We were paralyzed. My entire internal security team, 50 of the highest-paid engineers in Europe, told me we had to pay the $70 million ransom. They said we were dead in the water. The room was so quiet you could hear the wax dripping from the candles. Caroline looked like she was about to faint. My CTO told me there was only one firm in the world capable of reverse engineering the encryption in time, Harrison continued, his voice echoing in the vast, vaulted ceiling. A boutique firm based on the West Coast called Apex Solutions. We contracted their lead architect, H. Hayes. For the last 14 hours, I have been on a secure comms line with this architect, watching them systematically dismantle the ransomware, isolate the compromised nodes, and save my company from absolute, unrecoverable ruin. I told H. Hayes I owed them my life, and I was told they couldn't take my call to celebrate because they had to attend a family wedding. Harrison finally turned to look at Caroline, his gaze turning to ice. And now I walk into my son's rehearsal dinner, and I find H. Hayes, the founder and CEO of Apex Solutions, the most brilliant cybersecurity architect I have ever encountered, hiding behind a pillar because you told her she was an embarrassment. Caroline's face lost all its color. She looked from Harrison to me, her eyes wide with a terrifying, uncomprehending shock. Apex. CEO? No, Mr. Brooks. There is a mistake. Harper works at a help desk. She dropped out of law school. She's just Harper. She is a genius, Harrison corrected sharply, his voice slicing through my mother's pathetic delusion. She bills out at $5,000 an hour. She holds security clearances that most politicians only dream of. And she just saved my family from losing billions. He turned back to me, shaking his head in wonder. Why didn't you tell me? On the comms line. You knew who I was. You knew this was my son's wedding. I gently slipped my hands from his grip, standing a little taller. The itchy, beige fabric of my oversized dress suddenly didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a disguise I was finally ready to shed. Mr. Brooks, I said calmly, looking directly into his eyes. When we are on the clock, client confidentiality and objective professionalism are my only priorities. My personal connection to your family was irrelevant to the crisis at hand. I was hired to secure your network, not to secure a place at the head table. Harrison stared at me, a slow, deeply impressed smile spreading across his face. Professional to the core. Incredible. Preston finally pushed his way into the circle, his handsome face twisted into an ugly, defensive sneer. He looked at me as if I had just grown a second head. This is a joke, right? Harper? You're H. Hayes? You're the one who cleared the breach in the European division? Yes, Preston, I replied, my voice steady. I cleared the breach. Preston laughed, a harsh, nervous sound. Well, that's lucky, I guess. Good for you, Harper. Finally made something of yourself. But Dad, come on. Let's not let this overshadow the night. It's Savannah's dinner. Let the IT girl go back to her corner so we can celebrate. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Harrison slowly turned to face his son, the warm gratitude in his eyes instantly replaced by a ruthless corporate fury. The IT girl? Harrison repeated softly, dangerously softly. And that was when the real twist dropped. Dad, I didn't mean it like that, Preston stammered, taking a step back as he registered the terrifying look on his father's face. I just meant, we're here to celebrate my wedding. Savannah's big night. Savannah had finally glided over, her custom white silk dress shimmering under the chandeliers. She linked her arm through Preston's, flashing a practiced, charming smile at her future father-in-law. Exactly, Harrison. We are just so thrilled you made it. Let's not let business ruin the evening. Harper is used to being in the background anyway. The background, Harrison murmured, his gaze shifting between Savannah, Preston, and my mother. He let out a harsh, bitter laugh that echoed through the silent venue. He reached into his tailored suit jacket and pulled out a sleek, black smartphone. He tapped the screen twice and held it up. While Miss Hayes was saving our network, Harrison said, his voice turning lethal. She also tracked the origin of the breach. Do you want to know how the hackers gained entry to our closed-loop system, Preston? Preston swallowed hard. The smug arrogance was rapidly melting off his face, replaced by a sick, pale dread. Dad, this isn't the time. They gained entry, Harrison continued, speaking loud enough for the entire room to hear. Because the Vice President of European Acquisitions, that would be you, Preston bypassed our security protocols to download an unauthorized, unencrypted file onto your company laptop while using an unsecured public Wi-Fi network in Monaco last week. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Savannah's hand dropped from Preston's arm as if he had caught fire. You brought down our entire firewall because you were careless, arrogant, and incompetent, Harrison barked, stepping toward his son. You nearly cost this family everything. If it wasn't for the woman you just dismissed as the IT girl, Brooks Enterprises would be facing federal indictments by Monday morning. Preston opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He looked like a cornered animal. Harrison turned to Caroline, who was leaning against a marble pillar as if she needed it to keep from collapsing. And you, Caroline, you have spent this entire evening parading Savannah around like a prized show pony, desperate to attach yourself to my family's wealth. Meanwhile, you forced the actual brilliant, self-made millionaire in your family to wear a beige sack and hide in a corner because she embarrassed you. Caroline's lips trembled. Mr. Brooks, I didn't know. Harper never told us. Because you never listened, I interrupted, my voice finally rising, ringing out clear and strong. For the first time in 26 years, I didn't shrink back. I stepped forward, stepping into the light of the crystal chandeliers. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw past the perfectly coiffed hair and the designer jewelry. I saw a small, deeply insecure woman who only valued what she could show off to her country club friends. I tried to tell you, Mom, I said, my voice eerily calm. When I got my first major contract, I tried to tell you. You told me it was cute that I was playing on computers, and asked why I couldn't be more like Savannah. You didn't want a daughter, Mom. You wanted an accessory. You wanted a trophy. I turned to Savannah, my beautiful, golden child sister, who was currently staring at Preston with a mixture of horror and calculating disgust, realizing that her billionaire fiancé was actually a colossal liability. Congratulations on the wedding, Savannah, I said softly. I hope the Brooks family money is worth it. I looked back at Harrison Brooks. He was watching me with an expression of profound respect. Harper, Harrison said quietly, there is a seat open on the executive board of Brooks Enterprises. I want you in it. Name your price. I won't take no for an answer. The entire room held its breath. Aunt Beatrice looked like she was going to have a stroke. Caroline was staring at me with a desperate, pleading hunger in her eyes, suddenly realizing that I was the actual golden goose. I looked at Harrison, offered a small, genuine smile, and shook my head. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. It's an incredibly generous offer. But Apex Solutions is expanding, and my schedule is completely full. I prefer to be my own boss. I reached up and unpinned the ugly beige corsage my mother had forced me to wear, dropping it onto the polished marble floor. I turned to Caroline one last time. You told me to stay silent tonight, Mom, I said, my voice echoing in the absolute stillness of the glass house. Consider this my vow of silence. I am done. Do not call me. Do not text me. Enjoy the wedding. Without waiting for a response, I turned on my heel and walked toward the heavy oak exit doors. The crowd parted for me instantly, pulling back as if I were royalty. I didn't look back at the ice sculptures, the dripping orchids, or the shattered remnants of my mother's grand illusion. As I stepped out into the cool, crisp night air, the heavy doors shutting behind me, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I had a 6 a.m. flight back to the West Coast, a company to run, and a life that was finally, unequivocally, my own. The beige specter was dead. H. Hayes had arrived. Did Harper do the right thing by walking away from her toxic family? Or should she have taken the board seat to rub it in their faces? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you loved this story of ultimate revenge and silent triumph, smash that like button. Share this video with someone who loves drama, and hit subscribe so you never miss another crazy real-life story. See you in the next one.